They thought it would be a normal day for learning until they found the body of the head teacher dangling from the roof of a classroom. Pupils and teachers who had reported for the morning lesson remained in shock. The visibly shaken teachers refused to comment on the matter. Learning in Sogom Primary School came to a halt as the school waited for hours for the police to come and remove the body.
Hello, my name is Myra Richardson. On Thanksgiving Day 2011, while most of us were having Thanksgiving dinner with our families, loving our families, enjoying the football games, John and Sherry Thorson, Mary Thorson's parents, were waiting for their daughter to arrive to help prepare Thanksgiving dinner. But she was never going to come. Instead, the police were going to arrive and inform them that their daughter was gone, she was dead. When I heard about Mary's story, when I read it, I initially found out when I was provided a link to an article that was written by Becky Schlickerman, a reporter for the Chicago Tribune. And when I read the article, I was heartbroken, I was horrified, I was sad, I cried, and I immediately wanted to reach out to Mary's family. I wanted to tell them how sorry I was. I wanted to tell them that I was so sad for them because I knew that their hearts had to be broken. This was their baby, their child that was gone forever. Teachers are being abused. Teachers are afraid. Teachers are afraid to fight back because of what they stand to lose. Teachers don't deserve to be mistreated, inhumanely treated, bullied, tormented, because for any number of reasons, because there appears to be a certain type of teacher that's targeted. That teacher that has an unorthodox methodology, albeit an effective one, like in my case, or a teacher that goes above and beyond to provide for her students and make her students happy and feel comfortable, or a teacher like Mary that did all of those things but refused to commit an extremely unethical act for the sake of continued funding within the institution by refusing to alter her grades. Teachers are being targeted because they refuse to go along to get along. And this is wrong, it's shameful, it's horrible. But the only way it can stop, because it can stop, is if teachers become too afraid to remain afraid. Teachers have to stand up for one another, like when they stand up together, they're united, a united front, a powerful front, when they want an increase in salary. But what good is the salary going to do if you can't be comfortable within your classroom because you're being tormented for whatever the reason? Teachers are being abused. That's why I wanted to make this film, not only to share Mary's story and the horror of it, but so that the world would become more knowledgeable about the fact that this is happening. Teachers are being forced to resign from their positions. Teachers are being forced to acquiesce when they don't want to. Teachers are being terminated because they're refusing to do something that they believe goes against what's best for their student. And in terrible cases like Mary's, teachers are dying. And it's wrong. And it's sad. And something needs to be done. teachers have to stand up together and say, enough is enough. I'm tired of it. I'm not going to let you destroy me, because we need teachers. Without a teacher, no other profession would exist. Teachers are important. Teachers should be treated with respect, and teachers should be protected. When you ask how your child is doing in class, I would like for persons that see this film to also ask, how is my child's teacher? Because if the teacher is afraid, then they can't do what they need to do for your child. And there's a frightening domino effect. For example, an administrator bullies the teacher. The teacher refuses to acquiesce for whatever reason, and that teacher is dismissed. Then the students that loved and revered that teacher, if they're having any type of issues, emotional issues, whatever type of issue, and they depended upon that teacher, and that teacher's gone, then you have a situation like Columbine, or a situation like the one at Virginia Tech. And persons wonder why that happens. I believe I know why. Because the teachers that could be there for that child aren't there. Because they've been targeted, they've been abused, and they've been bullied within the workplace. It's happening every day to teachers, and it's wrong, and it has to stop. So I'm not going to go on any longer. I hope that you are as touched by Myra Thorson's story as I was when I heard about it. I loved being a teacher. Mary loved being a teacher. I love and respect teachers. I want teachers to be loved and respected in return. All right, honey. What's your name?
Kendall.
Kendall. And how old are you?
7.
You're 7 years old. And I want to ask you some questions about your Aunt Mary. What did you call her? Did you call her Aunt Mary or Auntie Mary?
Auntie Mary.
Auntie Mary. And did you love Auntie Mary, your Auntie Mary? Yes. Why'd you love her so much?
Because she was special to me and my whole family.
She was? And why was she so special? What was it about her that was so special?
She used to let us play games and things, other things.
Play games? What kind of games and things?
Video games.
Video games. Did you ever go swimming? Yes.
All the time with Auntie Mary.
With Auntie Mary, okay. Did she ever make you special things to eat?
Yes.
Like what? Because I heard she was a good cook. Was she a good cook? Yes. Did she ever make cakes or cookies?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. What do you miss about not seeing her? Do you miss her? And what do you miss?
I miss her because, she used to give us, other candy and stuff.
Candies? And do you miss talking to her? Yes. If you could see her again, what would you say to her? If you could see her for one little minute, and then she'd have to go, but you could see her one more time for just a few minutes, what would you say to her?
I love you. I hope you be safe.
Be safe. Well, I think she heard you say that, and I think that she is very happy that you decide to say something to her. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, John and Sherry, why don't you tell me about your daughter Mary. How was she as a child and growing up? What was it like having her 4 daughters?
She always listened and always loved to do things.
And argue.
And argue?
Yeah, with Dad.
She was headstrong.
Yeah, headstrong like her dad,
Okay.
which we always said. Unfortunately, she wasn't crafty like Mom, but that's okay. And then Dad loved to do the music and the camera stuff, so she was getting into that. And she did love to sing.
Yes.
A pretty good kid growing up.
She was a good daughter.
She was a good daughter. Yeah. And she loved baseball and sports in general. And we always kept her wrapped up in it, and she loved it.
What kind of sports did she play growing up?
Soccer.
Mostly baseball.
Mostly baseball.
Baseball.
She only did soccer once.
Okay. And what was she like? It's different when a kid is growing up. What was she like as a teenager? Was she rebellious at all, or was she still a really good kid?
Well, what teenager don't have their moments?
Yes.
But one thing that kind of stuck with me over the years is she just started driving, and she was going through Rock Island, and there's a guy that works for the city of Rock Island that was named John Thorson also,
Okay.
and the police pulled her over for speeding, and of course he seen her, she was Thorson, so she asked if she's John Thorson's daughter. Yeah, I'm John Thorson's daughter. And so he goes back to the squad car, and then he comes back again, and he hands her a driver's license. He says, "Well, you can go now." And she said something to him which brought on the situation with the Rock Island John Thorson versus the Moline John Thorson. And she couldn't believe that they were like that. That they would let her slide because they thought she was somebody else.
Thought she was someone else.
And so that kind of leads you up to how...
She's so headstrong on...
Yeah. Right's right and wrong's wrong.
Right's right,
Yeah.
wrong's wrong.
So it wasn't like, wow, I can't believe they let me go. She was kind of disturbed by the fact
Upset.
that
Pissed.
they did.
She'd come home and she was pissed.
Upset.
How can they do that, Dad? He let me go because there was a guy in Rock Island named John Thorson that worked for the city.
So she was very ethical even then. How old was she?
16, 17.
16, 17.
16 or 17 years old. Okay.
Even then, you know, you stop and think, right's right and wrong's wrong.
Was that the only time that she got into trouble? Well, that's not really
Well,
trouble.
that ain't trouble.
That's not trouble.
No, she never did.
Both of our kids were pretty good kids.
Even Johnny.
They had their little incidents, but nothing serious.
Yes.
And no, Mary was always...
Now, what made her decide to go to college? You said that she was the first in your family. Was she the first to graduate from college? Okay. And what did she want to do? Well, tell me about her going away to school. When did she join the military? She joined the military before she went to college?
She joined the military right out of high school.
Right out of high school.
Okay. And then she, at the same time she was, well, the National Guards. And at the same time she started going to Black Hawk College.
Okay.
And she didn't go very far there till she learned that, well, they ain't going to get the education she needs for what she's going for. So then she had to go to Macomb, the Western Illinois.
All right.
And so she decided that she was going to go there then. And by that time, she had graduated the military boot camp, and she was in the reserves. And while she was up there, she also was going through the studies to be a teacher, but she was also going through the officers training for the military.
All right.
And in a way, it was kind of a lucky thing she did, because her regiment out of Muscatine, Iowa, was called to active duty. And she didn't have to go, thank God, because of she was in officers training.
I see.
In the college.
All right.
But she didn't make any difference. We talked about it. I said, Mary, what would you have to do if you had to kill somebody? She says, well, I'll just have to take it as it comes.
Yes.
We'll find out when it gets here. Because she was very religious then, very religious then. And so she said, well, Dad, I'll just have to take it as, you know, when it happens. And
Now, she was in the Army Reserve, and she was in there for how long?
I believe she served 6 years. I ain't going to say for sure. I think she served her whole term, and then she pulled out. But while she was in the reserve, she also went overseas and helped them rebuild schools and military camps over there.
Did she?
Yeah. Where
Really?
was that at?
Don't want to say Guatemala?
Guatemala, maybe. I can't remember. All I know is she was gone at Christmas.
She was gone at Christmas. And how long did she do that?
She spent
That was a couple, well,
couple months,
just
summer.
Yeah.
She spent the summer up there.
And she was building schools.
Schools and military camps, and yeah, that was her job in the military.
Yes.
Masonry and construction. Yeah.
Now, at that time, did Mary ever talk about becoming a teacher, or that wasn't until later that she decided she wanted to become a teacher? I think you said that she was actually, was she studying to become a teacher while she was in the Army Reserve? She was. And
Well, she didn't go to college till after her boot camp.
till after.
And then I think she took some time off while she was in college because they shipped her overseas to do what she had to do.
I see.
And then she came back and went back. But I think her and Mom talked about the
Teaching.
what to become a teacher.
All right.
Was
She enjoyed teaching them.
well, she didn't her first year. When she got out of college and put her application in on the internet, a Northside school in Chicago called her, and it was on a Wednesday, I believe it was,
Yes.
and no interview or nothing. We want you to start Monday.
Okay.
So we had 3 days to get her moved up there and settled in so she could go to school and start
Go to
on
work.
a Monday. And there never was an interview. And of course, we found out why. That was in a very, very, very bad school. And she taught there 1 year and went to subbing after that for a while because she couldn't deal with the way they were running that.
And how were they running that?
They weren't.
They weren't running it.
Yeah.
So she didn't like the fact that what she felt that they weren't teaching the children properly,
There's no
or
discipline, no nothing. I mean,
No
it was
nothing.
just, it was bad school.
it's a bad school.
And I couldn't tell you the name of it for sure. And then, well, anyway, she went subbing, and that was a steady job because of the way the situation is up there in that school area. You know, there's always somebody missing, so you always got somebody to sub for.
Yes.
And then she went to a couple other schools 1 year at a time, and then she ended up at Cottage Grove in Fort Heights.
Yes. So it didn't, but that wasn't anything that discouraged her from being a teacher,
Oh,
though.
no. Oh, no. The one school she pulled out of was because it was a Spanish school, and she couldn't communicate with the kids all that well. So she moved on after that year. She moved on to the next school.
Yes.
And she finally moved out of Chicago into Indiana. Thank God. Boy, that was hectic getting to and from her place in Chicago. And then she found Cottage Grove.
Cottage Grove. So how long had she been teaching then before she became a teacher at Cottage Grove?
She was going to be 4 years at Cottage Grove, and she was a tenor.
All right.
So she would have had 10 years in at the end of this year.
10 years. Now, Cottage Grove, that's Cottage Grove Middle School.
Middle school.
And that's,
Well, I
is middle school 5th grade to what grade is middle school?
ain't for sure. I ain't for sure. Middle school was 7th through 9th when I grew up, so I couldn't tell you what it is now because they moved stuff around so much.
I see.
But
So she was then at Cottage Grove, and she was there for how many years?
4 years.
4
it's been
years.
4 years at the end of this year.
And at the beginning of her teaching career at Cottage Grove, that's District 169.
District 169, yes.
And that's comprised of how many schools too? Is Cottage Grove Middle School, and then there's one other school?
Yeah, there's a couple schools in that area.
Couple of
yeah.
schools in
The
there.
upper grade and the lower grade, yeah.
I see. And how did she feel about the school when she first started teaching there? Was it different from her past experience at the school where she didn't think they were doing much for the kids?
Well, it was a lot less hectic, okay, because it wasn't in town. But like I said, I think the last 2 schools she was at was pretty good, except she couldn't understand the kids in Spanish, so she moved on. And then she wanted to get out of the Chicago area altogether, so she moved to Indiana and got the job at Cottage Grove. It was just right across the border.
Okay.
And she liked the school.
She
And
liked
of
it.
course, she was there 4 years, and she got kind of attached.
Yes. Attached to the kids. And so everything was fine at the school. To what point, so she was happy. What kinds of things did she talk to you about as far as what she'd do for the kids at the school?
Oh, the last thing that was going on. She wouldn't talk. I found a lot out from Coach because Mary didn't want us to know, I think, how involved she was with the kids.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
But she was here last year, and we were at the Salvation Army shopping, jumping Salvation Army to Salvation Army. and Mary's was busy getting stuff for a play that they were having. And she would buy the stuff for the kids, like back in the 40s and 30s, clothes and stuff to dress them up like that for the play. And of course, she told us, well, I'm getting reimbursed for it.
But she wasn't.
Well, no.
She was spending her own money
Yeah.
to do it.
And from what Coach C was telling us, that yeah, and there's a lot of the teachers that do that, and that Mary would take kids' laundry home and do it, and purchase clothes and stuff for them, and stuff they needed. She was pretty involved with them.
Yes. And so this went on, I'm assuming, for some time, where she would do things for the children and spend her own money, because I've heard that she bought clothing and sometimes food, and would surprise the kids with different things. Is that just the kind of person she was in general?
Yeah, she loved to buy things for kids. Even my babysitting kids, she not only was excited about buying Christmas for us, she couldn't wait to take them to the mall and give them money to go to the mall and get stuff for Christmas. So she just loved, she didn't worry about her money.
That was Mary.
She just enjoyed watching their faces and enjoyed getting stuff, be with them to do it.
Yes. And so you said she was there for almost 4 years, so would you say the majority of the time at the school she was happy with the kids? Was she happy with the kids? Was there anything else going on, or she seemed happy overall with the kids and with teaching at Cottage Grove?
The first couple years was good with everybody, I think. She never had any complaints. And then after that, the first thing that was mentioned was they wanted her to change grades for a student to passing through. And of course she refused that. And that's when the trouble started with it. And then I guess she was always complaining to the principal about the disciplining of the kids, that nobody is showing them at home or in school right from wrong. Anything they would do, they'd be back in class the next day like nothing happened. And we're talking some serious stuff, like a 100 people brawl. And I guess one of the coaches fell and hurt his leg.
Breaking up a fight.
Yeah, breaking up the fight, and the police were involved, and everybody's back in school like nothing happened the day after. You know, where do the kids learn right from wrong if they can't learn at home? It should be at least partially in school, you know. But I believe a lot of it is done on account of no child left behind.
No child left behind.
No child left behind.
Is that what Mary would tell you? That she believed it was because of no child left behind?
It was in the suicide note.
Well, she didn't know too much about the no child left behind. She knew that it was a business. And she says, how can they run this school with these kids like it's a business? It's for the money. And in her notes that she left behind, she stated this. She says, how can they treat these kids like they do?
You can't pass a kid and expect him to survive in college. We're hearing that even now, that the college teachers up there can't believe that they can't read their writing, and it's like, how did they get here? And that's why, because they, in them schools, just passed them on down the road. And that ain't right. Kids have to know that they gotta read and learn how to do everything. Not a school pushing them just to get the money to do whatever they do with it.
So your daughter was disturbed by that.
Yes, she
Quite
was.
disturbed. Yep, she cried on the phone a couple times and here at home, explaining to us what was going on in the schools. Of course, she didn't understand that it wasn't. She just knew what was going on in that school.
Yes.
And it's a little bigger than just that school.
Because we're finding out it's all over.
Since this happened, there's been teachers contacting me through the news person, and that don't even know my daughter, and telling the same stories that they went through.
Yes.
And the horror that they went through in their schools because of what's going on, and it ain't right. How can they do this?
Now, even though Mary was having these issues within the school, she still wanted to remain in the school.
Yes, because
She
she
couldn't give up.
loved the kids and she wanted to be there for them. She didn't think walking away was going to be easy for her to do, knowing that they're still left behind.
Yes.
And nobody else is going to help them out like she thought she could do.
It's very obvious she couldn't leave.
She just didn't know how to change things. Obviously, she wasn't going to be able to.
Now, you said that Mary would cry at times because of the issues that she was having within Cottage Grove. Did she ever mention talking to any of the administrators about what was going on
Yes.
within the school?
Yes, she talked to the administrators and she talked to the principal, and you get no response out of them. You know, this is the way it is. They got tired of listening to it, and they were mad because she wouldn't sign off on the kids. This is how they get money, you know.
Yes.
And she wouldn't do it, and she kind of figured her job was on the line, and people have told her your job is on the line, that you're probably going to be the last year. This will be the last year.
Did she ever say who told her this? Or were they just her colleagues?
She never told me this. The union representative, well, she told me that she was probably not going to be there past this year, and she was very worried about it, and that's what would get her upset. But I was told by her union representative that she figured the same thing and told Mary the same thing, that her job was on the line.
That her job was on the line.
Yeah, I mean, well, not on the line, that it looked like she was on her way out, is how it was.
And how did she know that? Exactly.
By the way things have gone in the past, I assume.
This is how
You know.
Mary knew.
Yeah, well,
And because of the union
everybody,
rep.
you know, I don't think that was the only one that told her that was going to be her last year,
Yes.
you know.
Yes.
If you don't play ball, you're gone, and they can't get rid of you too easy after the tenor. So now's the time to do it. And you know, when a routine goes down in a school or anywhere for so long, everybody gets to know what routine is, and when it's your time to go, they know it.
Yes.
And of course, when I talked to Mr. Jackson about it.
And who is Mr. Jackson?
Mr. Jackson is the guy that runs the administrative part of the school,
Is he the superintendent?
or whatever.
All right.
And he said, "Oh no, we weren't going to let her go," but everything led to it. And it's easy to say that after the fact, when nothing can be done about it. But from what I've seen, yeah, she was on her way out. And from what other people said, the same thing. She was on her way out. And she couldn't deal with it. And she stated in her note, she stated, "I hope my death didn't go in vain. And let me be the first to sign the partition." And so
This is where we're at.
this is where we're at.
And So, but before Mary's death, right, she had been dealing with these issues in the school, and of course she wanted to remain because she was concerned for the kids. She didn't want to leave them. But apparently from what I'm hearing and what I've heard from others affiliated with the school, that things were not going to turn out the way Mary thought they could or should turn out. At what point did you realize that something was seriously wrong with what was happening to her within the school? Did you ever know, or was it just at times when she would just break down and tell you she wasn't happy with what was going on?
We knew because she was afraid that she was going to get fired, let go.
And how was she acting?
That's what would bring her to the tears. That's
She
what
would
would,
cry.
that's what would bring her to the tears. And at that point, we told her, you know, Mary, just pack up and come home. Just pack up and come home. And from what I understand, her coach told her, Coach C told her, Cunningham told her the same thing. Mary, pack up, go home, get your bachelor's, and start over.
Now, Coach Cunningham, did he work with Mary?
He worked with the boys, and they were all both
She worked
coaches
with the
for the
girls.
gym, for the school. And Mary and him hit it off. I mean, I heard a lot about Coach before all this went down, because it was Coach this and Coach that, and you know. And
So Mary was a PE teacher. Did she ever teach any other courses aside from that?
No.
So she wasn't any type of floater. She was strictly a PE.
I think in one of the
teacher.
schools she was at, I think, well, maybe that was temping. They had her temping for something else one time.
So she would temp sometimes.
Yeah.
That was before then. But
Yeah.
was she a full-time
Full-time.
coach?
Gym teacher.
Yeah.
Gym teacher
Yeah.
and coach. Okay. So you said it got to the point where she was crying. Was there any other change in her aside from the crying? How often were you seeing her at that time?
Oh, we would talk to her. We didn't see each other a whole lot in the wintertime, but in the summertime we'd get together quite a bit for camping and whatever.
Yeah.
The last we seen her before she died was on September 24th, was 2011, when we went camping up to
Lafayette.
Indiana. And then we were going to meet again for Thanksgiving.
All right. We can break here, or we can go on. Would you like to break now? Okay, we can go on then. Tell me how you found out that your daughter had died. What happened before then? This was since she died on Thanksgiving. When was the last time you had actually spoken with her before Thanksgiving?
2 days.
I spoke to her Tuesday because she got Wednesday off, but we don't have Thanksgiving until Friday. So when I talked to her Tuesday, there was kids in the background, and yet she sort of didn't sound happy. So I didn't understand what was, I just assumed it was during the day, so I just assumed she was on her break with the kids of gym. And she said, Mom, I've got a cold and I can't, I've got a cold, so I really don't want to come home tomorrow or Thursday tomorrow. I said, that's fine. I said, no, I don't want you coming home if you're sick, you know. I said, stay home, cuddle up, and get over your cold, and then hopefully you'll feel better Thursday. She says, yeah. She says, I'll call you when I'm on my way Thursday. I said, okay. So then she's coming home. So then Thursday at 1 o'clock, I'm like, wow, she's oversleeping, I guess. But I called, and then I called, and any time I call her, always the phone or the answering machine goes, but she calls me right back. But I just assumed, okay, she's out putting things in the car, or she's taking a shower, so no biggie. So then 2 o'clock came, and I said, something's wrong. Well, then he tried to say, well, she lost her phone or something. So, well, all right. I said, we'll wait and see. And then at 4:30, I looked at him. I said, John, there's something wrong. She does not call. So then he called the police. And then at 6:30, the police came to the door, verified that we were Mary's parents, and said that she was deceased. And I said, I just was not expecting that. I figured she might be in the hospital with the cold. Never thought in a million years that they were going to tell me that. Then we had to go up to the coroner's office up there the next morning and identify her body. And I hoped all the way up there that she let people drive her car, so I just kept on hoping it was some other woman. Wasn't going to be Mary. But then it was. And here we are today without our daughter.
And which one of you had to identify Mary? You did, John.
Did. I will not look at I did not look at her at the funeral either. I don't look at dead people.
And they wouldn't let me in to see her. They just brought a little
picture,
black and white, that they took and run through a printer, black and white printer, and, to identify her.
And then when we went to her apartment, she had on the bed her last picture of her that she took at school, and I knew what that was because she had given me pictures every year of her at school. And then at the end of the bed was all the things that she went through with that school. And they had given us the suicide note that was in her car. And we called the different friends that were up there to let them know that she was gone.
And so then, as painful as that was, you had to, of course, plan a funeral for your child.
Yeah.
And I believe, John, you spoke about the fact that the school wanted to send a representative because they wanted to, I guess, show how sorry they were. And what happened with that?
That was again Mr. Jackson wanted to send a representative from the school, and at this time I know why she did what she did, and I told him no. That it was well, they first wanted to send flowers, and I said no, don't bother. And then they said, well, we'd like to send a representative. I said no, don't bother. It's a private affair. And of course the good friends picked up on it and came anyway, you know.
Coach C.
And Coach C and a couple of the other teachers and friends of hers from up there came. And no, I didn't want nothing to do with it. Something just best left alone. And that there were some of them that just best left alone. How in the hell they can have a man like that run the district is beyond me.
And so after the funeral, did you hear from anybody anymore after the death of your daughter? Did you hear from teachers? How did it manage to get in the paper?
It got in the paper because of a teacher, ex-teacher, still a teacher in a different school district now, Amy. She seen it in the paper and she felt very bad, and when she talked to me about it after the article come out and she was able to get a hold of me, she told me she did it because she felt so bad and she knew something serious was going to happen because of the way they're doing business in the schools. And she says when she seen that, she seen it did happen, and she had to take and get a hold of the news and tell them about it. And she's the one that got things started. And then since then, it's been one teacher after another calling me and telling me what went on with them, and a lot of them didn't even know my daughter. And this is a big issue. It seems to be a biggest part of this country's being run like this in their schools, just for the money. Just for the money. Don't people realize what they do to people's lives? Don't they realize this?
And so the teachers that were contacting you, did any of those teachers talk about the fact that something similar happened to them, where they were being bullied or harassed?
And told to change
or
grades.
Told to do things within the schools where they taught?
I got one letter that was sent through the news people, emailed to me, and she said that the same thing happened to her. It was a 2-year period. Everything was good with her. They were praising her until they asked her to change grades for a student, and she happened to be a Spanish teaching Spanish kids how to speak English, and she wouldn't change the grades, and so she was on her way out. They run her out. And other teachers that were there, some of them were there before the No Child Left Behind. They were run out for, they wouldn't play their game, so they're gone. If they don't like you, you don't fit in, you're gone. It's as simple as that. And, you know, when you get into big cities, you know, there's so many problems with the kids, and it ain't the kids' fault. It's a lot of it is the parents. There's no parents. And so it ain't hard to set a teacher up. You know, when they're all having trouble, you just pick the one you want gone. Pick the one that don't fit in. Pick the one that won't do what you want, and they're gone. You know. And I heard around here, you know, it's happening down here where we live too. And one guy I work with, his daughter said that she was told to change grades for the student. She said, no. He said, you don't understand. I ain't asking you. I'm telling you. Change this grade. This is money in our pocket. No Child Left Behind. It's paying us to do this.
And why do you think that more teachers aren't coming forward to say anything if they're being harassed and bullied and threatened into doing unethical things within the school, or for any other reason? Why do you think they're not coming forward and speaking out?
Their job. Their job. You know? Well, if you're a teacher and you get run out of the business, what do you do? What do you do after that? You know, that's your profession. What do you do after that?
And so many are set up in their homes and everything. It ain't easy to... Mary was able to move around because she didn't own a home. But if you own a home, how are you going to go from another town or another school area to get a job? It isn't easy.
Now, you said in the suicide letter that Mary left, she mentioned a lot of things. She mentioned her students. that she referred to as her babies. She mentioned the condition of the school and wanting something to be done. You've talked to me about the teachers, her being concerned about the teachers and their treatment within the school. And, you know, I understand the teachers are concerned about losing their positions. But what do you think about that?
I think that
I mean, do you understand that fear?
I can understand that fear, but you know, at some point in your life, you've got to do what's right. My daughter took her life for this situation to make it obvious to everybody what was going on. And in her letter, she like I said, she stated that I hope my life isn't taken in vain, and let me be the first to sign the petition. And what she said after that was, I hope Obama or Winfrey will pick up on this and make it happen. Make it right in this place.
So she believed that Oprah Winfrey and Obama could do something.
Well, yeah, and they can, but everything is hush. You know, everything is... I looked on the internet and tried to find articles on what is actually going on in the school, and there is none. You can't find them. There's a lot of articles on let's get better teachers in there. What do you want better teachers in there for? You're throwing them out. You know, it is so hushed and quiet. I can see why they're scared, because there's a lot of people, I think, quite a ways up the ladder involved in this.
Yes.
You know, what can you say? I can understand their fear, but they've got to realize Mary opened the door here. And if you don't stand up and do something now, when? When? What else could happen that would make you do it?
So you believe that if teachers, what do you think the teachers need to do? Do you think that there's something they need to do as a whole? What can they do?
They need
What
to
do
speak
you want
out.
them to do?
I tell you right now, the thing they could do to probably make it more aware to everybody is I've got a petition out on change.com to sign that petition and state a note of what's going on. To make it aware. This is to the Secretary, a U.S. Secretary of Education is who it's for. And it states in there, stop bullying teachers and making them change grades to pass students.
Okay, this is on change.org,
Change.org.
where people can sign the petition.
Yes.
Yes. And what else do you think needs to be done? What do you think teachers need to do?
Speak out. Speak out and be heard. And this documentary should be what they're talking in. They should go through this and use it to their advantage. This is what my daughter died for. The least they could do is pick up from there.
All right, so you were saying, Sherry, about the signs that, did you see signs throughout the school?
No.
Anywhere in the school about bullying? You had mentioned that to me before.
We heard that the ones that told us up there at the school said that there was bullying signs saying do not bully, which was saying about the kids amongst themselves not to bully each other, because so much of this is going on in the news right now that kids are hanging themselves for being bullied for whatever reason, and it's such a hypocritical thing to see in the school when the superintendents and the principals are harassing and bullying my daughter, my teachers, the teachers. And yet it's so hypocritical to sit there and see this, knowing that they're saying, hey kids, don't bully, but it's all right for us to do it to the teachers. And that is just so wrong. And I just don't understand that you can be like, that they can do that.
This came out of a teacher's mouth that signed the petition. And it says that in the petition, the note that she left, that there is rules and regulations and about bullying, kids bullying bullies, and how it affects the students. But there is nothing in there to protect the teachers, and this is happening to them.
Yes.
And this was said by a teacher on the petition. So yeah, it's happening, and it.
Now, what do you were telling me before that you regretted the fact that you talked to Mary about becoming a teacher. Why did you think that she would be a good teacher?
Because she loves people and loves kids, and she always enjoyed, even when I babysat, she was always helping me babysit and loved kids. And then she loved being a baseball player and loved sports, and we played games outside all the time. So I told her, I said, well, Mary, since you're going to college and you don't know what you want to do with your life, I said, why wouldn't you want to be a gym teacher? Because then you get to play baseball all the time. She says, you know, Mom, you're right. I really should do that. But I can't believe that I sent her to her dad by telling her that. And not that these kids don't need teachers, but somebody's got to protect the teachers. And I just wished I would have never sent her that direction if I would have known. But I guess no one knows the future.
No. And the fact that she loved her students, if she hadn't become a teacher, her students wouldn't have known her and loved her. And that's why I'm hoping that this documentary is going to help, because teachers are important, and they need to be protected, and they need to protect each other.
They should be able to do their job and enjoy their work without worrying about, are they doing the grade so that they can pass? That ain't Mary's job. Mary's job is to teach them to play a game. And the health thing, she was always on the kids about changing their uniforms and wearing clean clothes and doing the health thing also in the school. And I know some of the kids didn't have that opportunity at home. They obviously don't have a washer and dryer. It's hard for them to get to the laundromat to wash their uniforms. So Mary took the uniforms home and washed them for them, just so they'd be clean. And she just really pounded it into their heads that, you know, life is rough out there, but you got to make an effort yourself too. So even if they would have had to wash their uniform out by hand, they really should have, you know, because Mary was also a health teacher, and she was trying to teach them that you don't walk around with dirty clothes on, you know, and stuff.
She let them know she cared.
Yes, she did.
Yes. Were there many teachers at the funeral?
2.
Well, there was other ones.
Coach
We don't know.
C.
There was people in the deal, and we don't know if they were teachers or friends.
All right, because you hadn't
They
met.
were friends and teachers, probably.
Yeah.
Friends and
Yes.
teachers.
But everybody that knew Mary said that she touched their hearts. She just got along with everybody and loved everybody. And I just don't understand how they could have treated her that way up there and harassed her and make her feel so terrible to want to kill herself. But that's why she went in front of a semi, to show the world that things aren't right there.
All right, John. Can you tell me what kind of relationship you had with your sister?
Well, when we were younger, it was a competition type thing. She was a fast runner. That was one thing I was jealous of her. Well, I was too. I was faster than most of the kids in the neighborhood, but she was just faster than me, you know.
Yes.
And you know, so it started out as normal sibling rivalry and stuff. But then as we grew older, we got closer, and
What is the age difference between you and your sister?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. What was it like having Mary for a sister? Because most brothers, like you said, the sibling rivalry and everything. What was it like having her as a sister?
She was fun. She very determined. You know, when she set her mind to doing stuff, she did it.
Did you ever hear, because of course in talking to your parents, they told me that your sister was very unhappy. She had come to them complaining about the situation at Cottage Grove School where she taught, and how she was being harassed by the superintendent, Jackson, by the principal, and at times some of the other teachers, only because they were afraid to say anything, to stick up for her. Did you ever have an opportunity to speak with Mary about what was going on in the school?
Not really. I mean, a lot of the stuff that I really ever talked to her about just regarded the students.
The students?
Yeah, just the students. I mean, she may have mentioned something. I can't recall. Saw the court papers laying on her bed when we got up there to clean up her house.
Do you think that your sister had good reason to believe that they were going to dismiss her from the school?
Oh yeah. I mean, they definitely sent out the implications, you know. It wasn't, I think it was, you know, one of those things. I mean, even Coach C went up and asked him, I don't know as far as when it was, but he went up and asked him, are you going to fire Mary?
Really?
And I don't know that they actually gave him an answer, but
yes.
But yeah, yeah, the implications were there.
That they were going to do.
Yeah.
How did it, because it's one thing, of course, knowing that your sisters died, but when you were in her place and you saw how she had those things laid out, did you, of course it was intentionally done, so that, you know, people would realize, did you, well maybe I should reword that, did you get the impression that those things were there for a reason, not just for your family, but for other people to know what was being done?
It's definitely to, you know, let's get something done, you know. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, she laid everything out, said, here you go, here's everything you need.
I don't remember if I asked your parents this question, but was her uniform there as well?
It may have been in her sea bag, I'm not for sure.
Okay. I'm assuming that Mary talked to you about her students and her love for her students.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know that. I know how she is with kids.
Yes.
You know, she was, you know, all the kids gravitated to her. She's just, you know, fun. She just liked to have fun, you know. And
Yeah.
whatever took to have fun, go dancing or singing or, you know, anything. And kids just gravitated to her. And you could just tell she was going to be good with kids. And
Yes.
be good with her kids, but she had some.
Yes. I know it's very hard, and I'm sorry to have to ask you these questions because it's so new. Your sister's only been gone a short time. You were telling me when I spoke with you briefly about how much she gave as a teacher to her students. Why do you think, as much as she loved them, she would decide that she couldn't stand being in the world anymore? Because clearly from reading the suicide letter, which I've seen, she loved your mother and father, and she loved her students, and she loved her brother, you. Why do you think she would want to leave everyone?
She was afraid she was going to lose her students, and she was going to lose, what she loved to do, which was teach. And, when you have stuff like that being put on your record, it's kind of hard to get another teaching job when, you got some bogus stuff on there. I mean, Mary just tried to be, one of the kids and teach some kids along the way, and when she had to be stern, she had to be stern, and she never lost. I've never ever in my life seen my sister lose control.
Yes.
Not in anger, not in anything. And, so I know where all that little bull crap is coming from.
Every indication points to the fact that she left that suicide letter because she wanted something to change. And she felt like people would listen if she did what she did to herself in a very public and very brutal manner. Mm-hmm. If you could tell the world something about your sister, what would you say? Or if she were here, if you could say something to her, since you didn't get a chance to say goodbye, what would you say to her?
Tell her I love her.
Yes, it's clear that you loved her.
And she didn't have to do this. There's always another way.
Do you think that maybe she thought there wasn't any other way because nobody was listening, especially at the school?
Well, it's hard. It's hard to have something like that going on, and you wanna, and it's not only affecting her, it's affecting how our students are being done, and not giving them the right guidance. And she's just, and when you go up and up and up, and it's just as bad all the way up. Where do you go? Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education, say, hey, this is going on. I guess if that's what it takes, that's what you do, But it's ridiculous that, people just think it's okay to treat people like that. And you're messing with somebody's livelihood.
Yes.
I've been in positions where, I've had to determine somebody's job, and I've told them flat out before I even said anything to my superiors, this has got to change. What you're doing has got to change. So it ain't, you don't just mess with somebody's livelihood just because you want to throw some money somewhere, and that's what I don't understand. If they're getting this money for the how well they're doing with the students' grades and so on and so forth, and attendance and all that. But it's like, you don't care about what they're doing, but you want to care about how it appears they're doing. So the money obviously ain't going to the students because you don't care about them in the first place. So where's this money going? Is it going to another school that's, helps support their their sporting events and stuff like that, so that they can continue to have a football league because their money's down. You know, what is it? You know, is it? I don't know. I mean, I think it's stupid. I think that the people need to grow up and think about not just themselves anymore. It's,
Yes.
you know, I mean, I care about everybody, you know.
Yes.
I mean, if I see somebody hurt, you know, I go help them. You know, I don't be like, oh, shoot, you know, I see somebody in trouble getting kicked out of them, you know, I'm going to do my part to stop it.
Yes.
You know, I can say, oh, dang, that hurt, and walk on down the street. You know, but that's the mentality that people have. Well, it's not happening to me, so whatever.
Now, what do you feel? Do you believe that teachers don't stand up because they're afraid to stand
Well, of course
up?
you're afraid. I mean, especially if you've been in the education system for a long time, you know, and you've got, in today's economy, when you've got so much money coming in, you know, if you got 15 years in the education system and you're making $50,000-$60,000 a year, don't nobody want to pay another teacher, you know, a teacher that kind of money coming out. They want, you know, let it build over time so they can save their money, you know. So it's, you know, it's business, but, you know, and that's what they're playing on, the fact that that's the way the market is, and that's, you know.
Yes.
So they're playing, and when you're a teacher and your job's threatened, it's, you know, fight or flight. Fight or flight.
Now, do you believe, though, that even though they're afraid, do you think that they should still do something?
Oh, yeah. Well, like I said before, you know, you always got to stand up for yourself. Stand up for what's right and do what's right, you know. It is that simple. I do it every day. You know, I might not be the greatest person in the world, but I always try to do what's right.
Yes.
You know, and
so that you can look at yourself in the mirror and yes. So what was it like when you were at the funeral? Were there a lot of people there for Mary that you noticed?
Students, I'm assuming older students from maybe Cosgrove, I'm not sure. Friends from my dad's work, a lot of her old friends that she ain't seen in a long time. Neighbors that we ain't seen since we were neighbors, and that was a long time ago. And
now your dad was saying that they wanted to send a representative from the school. They wanted to send flowers. They wanted somebody to come from the school saying, you know, we are sorry for her death. And your dad said, I don't want you near here. Did you agree with that? Do you understand that?
I understand my dad's anger, and I understand, you know, I mean, like I said, I'm not, you know, like I said, I believe Mary did what she did because she felt like her life was, her world was ending, and she wasn't going to be able to continue to do what she wanted to do. And sure, they were the reason that she felt like that, but, you know, I'm more, this type of stuff happens in all businesses in some shape or form all over the country. I mean, my aunt dealt with it in her construction job. She was a machine operator on highways, you know, repairing highways, and she came across that same type of antagonistic, you know, mentality from the men. And, you know, I mean, granted, her job wasn't threatened, and, you know, she might not have been threatened in any way, but, you know, it's just, even that little stuff, you know, it wears on people.
Do you think it's different, and you're right, harassment of any kind happens in just about every profession, but do you think it's different when it's happening to someone that is responsible for children all day long?
I think that teachers have a hard enough time just dealing with students. And when you got to deal with the politics of school, the school system, on top of it because they're not doing the right thing, it's got to be overwhelming, especially when you're someone who cares. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I've run into a lot of teachers that don't care. You know, they're just there to, you know, do what they got to do and get out.
If you could do something over again where Mary was concerned, as far as your relationship with her as her brother, what would it be?
Just call my sister every day, no matter what.
So there was an issue with Mary refusing to alter the grades.
Yes.
I've also heard that there was an issue with one of the students, with one of Mary's students, and that Mary was accused of hitting this child, even though it was always said that it was done in fun.
Yes.
They were roughhousing. Mary loved her students, they loved her, and they would have these playful interactions. But this time, apparently the child was upset with Mary over something and decided to tell her mother that Mary actually hit her, that it wasn't a playful type contact. I wanted to know more about that since the institution, namely the superintendent and others, made it appear as though Mary should be suspended because of that, without pay. But later, the mother, the parent of that child, sent a letter to, I believe, Superintendent Jackson, and I believe to another agency, where she states specifically that Mary should be left alone, she shouldn't be punished any longer, that the interaction was playful, and that her daughter admitted that it was, and that she thought Mary was a wonderful teacher, that she made a huge impact on the students, and they needed her, and to please not dismiss her. This was a letter that I saw, and personally, I thought that would have ended that situation, but apparently not, since Mary remained on suspension, only this time with pay. And then, of course, it went into an issue where she was supposed to come for a meeting, and they were going to discuss her possible termination. Did you hear anything about this child and
Yes.
this? And what did you hear?
Mary called me the day of the incident,
Yes.
and she expressed to me the same things that you just said, which was it was a playful thing.
Yes.
There was nothing initially taken out of context.
Yes.
Mary did let me know that she personally spoke with the child's mother, and everything was fine.
Yes.
But Mary also told me that it was the administration who took it and blew it up and ran with it.
Yes. And that's when I interviewed Mary's brother, John. He mentioned the paperwork that was left on the bed after his sister's death, and that it was bogus. Were there any signs, when you think about the time before, the last time you were with her, when you talked to her, was there anything that seemed unusual in her behavior, or anything that would have led you to believe that she was not going to be alive for long?
No.
Nothing.
Mary's voice was so smooth. It was as if her mind was already made up, and there was no inkling, no clues verbally,
Yes.
by way of me hearing her voice, that made me think that that was something that would ever cross her mind.
Did you think that Mary was that unhappy from things she was sharing with you about what was happening to her within the school?
I didn't think she was that unhappy. There had been multiple times where it would either be by phone, or if Mary came to see me, or if I came to see Mary, she would be so emotional about the things that transpired as far as being bullied. I mean, she would literally break down and cry.
And what kind of things would she discuss that they were doing to her within the school? And who was doing? Who would she say was doing it to her in the school?
She discussed with me certain things, such as, for example, she had an evaluation that she did not approve of, and she was requested to sign it.
Yes.
She did not sign it, but yet somehow her signature got there.
Really?
Yes. This is one of the things that she discussed with me.
And how did she, of course, that was disturbing and upsetting that someone would forge her signature onto a document, especially a document that's going to find its way into her file and follow her throughout her career. So when she discussed that with you and she broke down over it, how did she say what she intended to do? Did she say that she'd had enough of being at the institution and wanted to leave?
She explained that she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do because she did not want to leave her kids.
Yes, and I've heard that many times. She did not want to leave her babies, the students.
Yes.
So she was tolerating the abuse to stay with them.
Yes.
But it was getting progressively worse.
Yes.
I respect the fact that you came for this interview with me and that we're going to conduct it anonymously. And even though that's going to be a little difficult for me because I know who you are, I'm going to try real hard not to say your name as I'm interviewing you. So if you could please tell me how long, you did tell me that you were affiliated with District 169.
Yes.
And I just want to make certain that we're talking about the same school. Are we talking about Cottage Grove Middle School?
Yes.
And when you were there, you were a teacher?
Yes.
And what kind of a teacher were you?
Special ed teacher.
Special ed. Were you familiar with Myra Richardson at all during your time there? You were?
Yes.
And in what capacity?
She was the gym teacher, so all my students would see her.
All right.
Her in gym.
All right, she was a gym teacher. What kind of person would you say that Mary was?
She was a good teacher, very caring. She always reached out and, willing to help and support whoever that needed help in any shape, form, or fashion.
Yes.
She loved the students.
Yes.
And she would cook special meals for the staff.
So you said she was a good teacher, the kids loved her.
Yes.
And she seemed to love her and care about her students.
Yes.
Was there ever a time within the school that you noticed that Mary was being mistreated in any way? Or did you, because of course I've interviewed persons, teachers, her family, that have said that she was mistreated by administrators, at times by the principal of the institution, primarily by the superintendent of the school, Superintendent Jackson. And they said that she was basically, after being approached by him many times, initially to alter grades, that he would be very intimidating, yell at her in front of the students, and do different things. Did you ever notice any of this happening while you were there as a teacher?
Not with Dr. Jackson, but one day I was in the office, in the main office,
Yes.
and I overheard a couple of administrators talking about Coach T, Myra Thorson.
Yes.
They were saying that, oh yeah, we need to get on her, and I'm getting ready to do that right now. One of the teachers said that.
Get on her.
Yes.
And what did you understand that to mean? Get on her.
As the way that they were doing me, harassing me, I thought, they're getting ready to start harassing her.
Harassing her. And when you heard that, what did you approach Mary and tell her what
I
you
was looking
heard?
for her, and I found her, and I told her, I said, I overheard your name in the office, and they're talking about coming after you. I said, so I'm just letting you know. I said, because they've been doing me the same way, and you know, just watch your back.
Watch your back.
Keep your eyes open.
Yes. Now, you said that you overheard this conversation. Was this within the principal's office?
Yes, it was, in the main office.
All right. And you said that, I guess it concerned you that they were talking about her and the fact that you said they were harassing her already, or they were talking about her and what they were going to do to her?
They were talking about what they were going to be doing, you know, what they're getting ready to do to her.
And you understood what they meant by that because they were already doing it to you.
Yes.
And what were they doing to you?
There were a lot of things that was done by different staff members. Like they were ganging up on me, not supporting me. One teacher would have their class list, or actually everybody would have their class list except me. And then when I go and ask for mine, I would be told that I'm getting on the person's nerves.
Yes.
And I said, well, should I come back to you to get it, or would you come to me? And I said, because all the other teachers have their class list, and, you know, I want to get my classroom together.
All right, I needed to stop because you put your head down, and I want to make certain that I respect how you feel during this interview about remaining anonymous. And I also want you to know that I respect that, and that it's very telling that you are afraid and you are no longer affiliated with District 169. So that's very important. All right, so you were having issues within the school, and you started to have problems with your unborn child. And the doctor attributed that to the high stress level within the school, being a teacher, and everything that teachers have to go through in general, being teachers.
Yes.
But in your case, you were going through other things within the institution that you've already spoken about.
Yes.
So when did you realize that your child had died inside of you?
I think it was like 2 weeks or something when I left, when the doctor told me not to return.
Doctor told you not to
It
return.
was 2 weeks after that.
And he told you not to return because the baby had died? Or did he tell you not to return because he wanted you to rest so that the baby wouldn't die?
If I'm remembering, I think I had already had the miscarriage. And the doctor told me not to return to work.
He told you not to return. Now, you told me that the doctors had told you that the baby had died inside of you, but that they couldn't remove the child at that time. Tell me about that. You were no longer with District 169 when this happened, correct?
Right.
All right,
I had
so
left off of sick leave.
So what happened with the baby?
I was told that I was miscarriaging.
Yes.
And they told me that I wasn't going to be able to come into the clinic to get it taken care of until almost a week. So I was at home knowing that this, you know, my baby, I was in this situation and my baby was deceased in my stomach. And I had to, go day by day like that for almost a week.
And how long had you been away from District 169 and Cottage Grove School, Middle School? How long had it been since you'd been there by the time your child died?
It was less than a couple of weeks.
Less than a couple of weeks.
Less than a couple of weeks.
Yes. Now, you told me that, of course, you knew Mary. Did you have a good relationship, a good working relationship with Mary?
Yes, I did.
You did?
Yes, I did.
And so when you left Cottage Grove, you left because of illness?
Yes.
And the doctor just did not want you to return to the school, correct?
Yes.
All right. And how long had you been away from Cottage Grove before you found out that Mary Thorson had died?
It had to be a year and 8 months or something like that, because I left January 2010.
Yes.
So from January 2010 till November 2011.
All right. And how did you find out that Mary had died?
Another teacher that was being harassed at the school called me.
So a teacher that was being harassed, was she still working within the school?
No.
So she was gone. Had she been, how did she leave Cottage Grove?
She was asked to resign.
She was asked to resign.
Because of, she was almost at tenure. And she was, surprised that she wasn't going to get tenure and that they wanted her to resign.
They wanted her to
So
resign.
she was very upset about that, and they was harassing her, going in and out of her classroom every day.
Yes.
So she was the one that had called me.
All right. And when she called you, she told you, how did she tell you that Mary had died?
She said, you won't believe what happened. And I asked her, and she told me, Coach T committed suicide. And then I started asking questions, and then that's when she started giving me more detail.
Yes. And how did you react when you heard that this woman that you said was so kind, that loved her students so much, that was kind to you, that would make meals for the staff, good meals, how did that make you feel when you heard that she had taken her life?
It was heart-wrenching because I had been through the same thing.
Yes.
And memories throughout the day when I got off the phone with the teacher, just memories of what I had been through myself. I, would go out the day and just be teary.
Yes.
I would cry throughout the day off and on.
Yes.
Because it brought back those memories of what I had been through and how I lost my baby.
Yes. Now, and I'm sorry about your child. And that's why this film is so important to me as a former educator. Because when people start to die, I can't say this enough, when people start to die, either your own children, which in your case your child is dead, and now a teacher is dead, even though Mary clearly chose to die because she wanted to call attention to what's been going on, not only within District 169, but what is going on with teachers all over the country that are being abused by administrators. And they're getting away with it because the teachers are afraid. All right, so you heard that Mary had died and you were distraught over that. And so what made you contact Becky Schlickerman, the reporter for the Tribune? Did you happen to see the article as well?
Yes, I did. I seen the article, and I was interested in getting in contact with the parents.
Yes.
Because I wanted to let the parents know that I had been through the same thing.
Yes.
That their daughter was going through, and that I had lost my baby.
Yes. And John and Sherry Thorson, very kind people. I talked to them they told me that they had spoken with you, and how you shared the fact that you had gone through a great deal of abuse within that institution, and you wanted them to know that you were sorry for their child.
Yes.
And what had happened to her. And they felt very badly about you. And they have a lot of respect for you and the fact that you came forward to talk to them and try to console them, as have many teachers.
Yeah, because if I would have held on to it and didn't say anything about it, I think that it would have haunted me for the rest of my life.
Yes.
So I wanted to let them know that they had my support.
I'd first like to know how you came to know about Mary Thorson and her story, because I assume that you did not know Mary personally.
No, I did not know Mary personally. My mother had shown me the New Year's Day article, as in January 1st, 2012,
Yes.
in the newspaper, and she said, you really need to read this. And after I read the article, I felt that there was more to the story
Yes.
than what was in the article, and I knew that I needed to write about it and reflect on it.
So, what are you going to share with
I'm
us?
going to share the piece of my reflective writing that I feel best describes how I was feeling about the whole situation.
All right.
Not just the death, but about what has continued
All right.
since then. On New Year's Day, 2012, my mother showed me a newspaper article. I read about Mary Thorson, a teacher who met an oncoming semi-truck on Interstate 8094 with no intention of walking away. I felt motivated to write because Mary and I have two things in common: our love for our students and our desire for justice to prevail. In my first district, I worked with students, some of whom came from families who were not as fortunate to have two parents at home and perhaps lacked in the niceties that most children enjoy. Coach T, as Mary's students affectionately called her, devoted her life to her students and also used her own money to purchase basic needs for them. Mary's district services students, the majority of whom have families termed low income. When students receive as much, if not more, from school than home, they develop a deep familial connection with their teachers. My own biological children ask me how my kids are doing, because I consider my students my kids as well. Coach T considered her students her babies, and they craved her company. How does a well-liked teacher choose her own death? According to the note she left, Mary felt targeted for dismissal. I faced dismissal a couple years after moving to a new district. My world turned upside down. Teaching is not a career one simply chooses to do. Teaching is a passion that moves one directly to envelop oneself in the lives of his or her students and becomes an interaction of unconditional love. Any teacher who devotes her life to her kids would experience the loss of her job as that of a parent losing a child. Devastation sounds too mild a word. Why did Mary feel targeted for dismissal? Her father, John, told me that the administration wanted Mary to change a student's earned grade, and she refused. It appeared that the administration did not appreciate her unwillingness to cooperate and began bullying to enforce their directives. In a different district, I knew of a superintendent who would belittle certain teachers. In that district, the teachers banded together to speak to the Board of Education. The Board of Education sympathized with the teachers' issues, but was unable to dismiss the superintendent in order to provide protection for the teachers. This led the teachers to unionize. In order for any union to work, the members must stand together. They must have each other's backs to stay strong.
Yes.
Every Illinois school district is required to have an anti-bullying plan in place for its students' interactions because, according to the ILCS, the General Assembly finds that a safe and civil school environment is necessary for students to learn and achieve, and that bullying causes physical, psychological, and emotional harm to students, and students are worthy of this, and students' ability to learn and participate in school activities. Our students are worthy of this protection. Our teachers are certainly worthy as well. Mary's death is not your typical suicide. She did not have a previous history of psychological issues with which she dealt. Mary Thorson served honorably in the U.S. Army Reserve for 8 years. Most suicides are to end pain quickly in the least painful manner. However, she chose the opposite of a solitary slide into oblivion. Mary Thorson chose her death to be public. In doing so, she exposed the bullying she and other teachers were experiencing. She systematically developed her attack plan, one which left the district's administration accountable. Her act of self-sacrifice provided the impetus for her fellow teachers to speak out about the district's practices. I wish I would have known Mary before she chose her life's exit, because I would have reached out to her.
Yeah.
For those of you in a similar teaching situation, know there are resources to help you. You are not alone.
How did you come to know Mary Thorson?
I didn't know anything about Mary Thorson until I received a phone call from one of my friends, and she informed me about Mary's suicide.
You are a teacher, correct?
Yeah,
Are you a teacher within District 169?
I was for 4 years.
You were. And when you were teaching there, were you a teacher within Cottage Grove Middle School as Mary was?
No.
And where were you a teacher? There are 2 schools within the district,
Yeah.
correct? So you were a teacher at the other school. Now, I really don't know much about the other school. What is the other school?
It's Medgar Evers Primary Academic Center.
Take your time. Take your time.
I felt like I had something in common with Mary because I was bullied at that school district. I would call it more like being harassed. And during my last year of school there when this occurred, in some ways I almost predicted Mary's death because I said to one of my best friends that the type of thing that happened to me was going to happen to somebody else, and that something very bad was going to happen.
Let's stop right here. All right, now you said that when you found out about Mary's death, you felt compelled, I would say, to notify the media, and you did it immediately, like right after you got off of the phone with the person that told you she had died.
I was sitting at my desk working on a paper when my friend called me, so I immediately closed out the documents that I was working on and I started emailing. And you said you did that for what reason? Why?
The main reason that I did it is because when I looked up Mary's suicide online to see if anything had been posted, there was a 2-sentence blurb about somebody who had jumped in front of a semi, and that was it.
Yes.
And it didn't list a name, it just listed, I think, suicide. It was just ridiculous.
Yes, there wasn't much.
And I thought to myself, this deserves some attention.
Okay.
You know, it deserves, somebody needs to pay attention to this because
Yes.
it just deserves it. And I know that Fort Heights does not get any press coverage because it's an extremely small town, 1 square mile. Newspapers don't attend the school board meetings.
Really?
No. It receives very little, if any, press coverage for the entire town.
Now, if this had been in Chicago with a school teacher, of course it would have been covered. I was shocked that there was no coverage, not to my knowledge. There wasn't any coverage of Mary's death, not even, accident footage, nothing, except the same blurb that you saw. That's what I saw, until you managed to actually reach someone. But I don't want to jump ahead too much. All right, so you felt compelled to contact someone because you didn't like the fact that this was a teacher that had died, and it was almost as if it wasn't a concern. It wasn't a big deal. There were just a few lines about her death, that she had been hit by a semi, and that was it. Mm-hmm. But was there more, though, that made you reach out in that way to basically to the world, to say somebody needs to say more about this woman because there's a lot more to say?
Well, I had heard a little of what had happened to Mary from the district, just little bits and pieces, because of course I asked why, would she commit suicide? Was it a personal thing?
Yes.
Was it, and then they told me, who told me,
Yes.
had a little bit of knowledge of her suicide note. And she said that it mentioned a lot about the district and
Yes.
that she had been mistreated. And I had been mistreated, not in the same way that Mary had, but I had undergone a lot of harassment.
So you were being harassed. So you're, excuse me, you're a kindergarten teacher?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you were being harassed.
Mm-hmm.
And you were being harassed by what persons?
Administration.
The administration. Are the administrators, I'm assuming that the administrators for one school are the same for the other because it's so small.
In terms of administration at the very top, yes.
At the very top.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you each have your own principal then. Mm-hmm. Yes, I guess you would. And they're different schools. All right. Well, some schools have a...
One that travels, but yeah,
yes,
no, there's two.
There are 2 schools. So the person that was... Would you say that this person was harassing you?
They were.
At work?
Because I informed them that if the harassment did not stop, that I was going to get an attorney.
All right. And did this person happen to be the superintendent of the schools?
Yes.
So the superintendent of the school, both schools, is Mr. Jackson, correct? Correct. And when you say he harassed you, I guess I'd like to know why he was within the school. Would he actually come to the school to harass you there?
That's a record, yeah.
And what was he
would regularly come to the school.
All right, regularly. So when you say regularly, how often was he coming?
I mean, sometimes he was there every other day.
Every other
Not to harass me every other day, but it occurred quite often.
Every other day. Did you notice whether he did this to other teachers?
No, not at the time. I was the selected one.
The selected
And would you say that Mr. Jackson presented himself as an intimidating person within the school when he would come?
Absolutely.
All right, so he was the kind of person that when you knew, did you know ahead of time if he was coming to the school?
No.
You didn't, so he would just make pop visits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And when he would come to the school, he would single you out?
Yeah.
Would he come to your classroom?
It was normally outside of my classroom.
And what was his reason?
It would vary.
For example?
Taking sick days.
Taking sick days, all right. And when he would approach you, how would he approach you? In what way?
Usually loud. And,
So he would reprimand you.
oh yeah.
Not within the office, but he would do it.
Well, I was reprimanded in the office too.
But all right, so he would do this then in front of other teachers.
Yes.
And that means that the children were present because it would be during school hours. Correct?
They were down the hallway, like my principal kind of stood. One incident that I remember, my principal actually walked my kids in the other direction. So they were there at the initial.
So they were there to hear him yelling from at the beginning, but then they were moved away. So
I mean, they
wouldn't
knew that
witness it.
something was bad,
They
you know,
knew.
and that something happened.
How old are these babies? Like what, 3, 4?
They're 5 and 6.
5 and 6. So the babies, because that's what they are watching the superintendent of schools screaming at their teacher. Okay. And how long did this last with him? Abusing you or bullying you within the school? How long did that last?
It was a few months.
A few months.
Mm-hmm.
You discussed another occasion where the superintendent actually had you within his office.
It was my principal's office.
The principal's office. And he was also present. Is the principal female?
Yeah.
Female, all right. And so he had you in there, and for what reason this time?
I was getting ready to go to lunch, and they asked me if I would come in for just a minute to sit down. Okay. And I wasn't really sure what was, what it was going to be about. But I'm not a defiant person. And so I sat down with them, and then when the door closed, it immediately went hostile. And I stood up and I said, I don't have to take this. I don't have union representation with me. Because this wasn't the first time where we had to have meetings with sit-downs. And he told me, sit down immediately. He told my principal to stand up by the door. And she basically stood and blocked the door. And they kept me in there for about 45 minutes.
So he tells the principal to get up and stand in front of the door.
Because her chair was, right. All she had to do was stand up, and the door was right there.
All right, so she stands in front of the door. Does he lock the door?
No.
She just stands there. Mm-hmm. And what did you do?
Well, I was standing because I was going to leave. I told them, I don't have to take this.
And what did he say?
Sit down.
Did you sit down?
Not at first.
When you say not at first, what do you mean? Were you afraid?
When the principal stood up and blocked the door, I was crying, and then I sat back down because, I was pretty much...
2 against 1.
Yeah.
Yes. And how was the principal reacting?
She didn't say anything. She just listened.
She didn't seem surprised that a man would be abusing not just a teacher, but a woman. That didn't seem to surprise her at all?
She didn't have any reaction.
She just did what she was told. She was told to stand there, and she stood there. Mm-hmm. And he kept you in there again for how long? 40 minutes?
It was about 45 minutes.
45 minutes. And he was doing what? Reprimanding you?
At first he was reprimanding me.
Yes.
And then towards the end, he told me that I couldn't leave the office until I was calmed down. So then after that, it just went to a casual conversation. Because they told me that I couldn't leave until I calmed down.
Until you were calm.
Because I had to go back to my classroom and finish teaching my kids for the rest of the day.
And he
Isn't that
didn't want you
ridiculous?
to be noticeably upset.
Well, everybody knew I was when I walked out because of my face.
Was he screaming
Yes,
at you?
and the secretary had to cover my classroom, so they were all wondering what was going on because I was basically kept in there.
All right. And after that, what did you do? Once you got out of their office, what did you do then? Did you go home, you returned to your classroom, and finished out the day?
Finished the day.
And what did you do once you returned home?
Oh, I cried a lot. I don't think I went to school the next day, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Once the harassment and stuff started, I developed an ulcer, and I threw up a lot. And when I would get really stressed out, I was sick. So
this went on with the superintendent for how long?
It started in, I believe it was March.
Yes.
Yeah. It was around March. And it lasted through the end of the year.
Through the end of the year. And why did you stay? Why did you stay?
Oh, I felt obligated.
Obligated to who?
To the kids.
To the babies. Right. Just as Mary stayed because she felt obligated to her students that she referred to as her babies.
And I really liked my job.
Okay. You liked your job. So
with the exception of, that time period.
Yes.
I wanted to work there for a long time.
So you liked your job.
I did.
You wanted to stay with the children. And so you tolerated the abuse from the administrators because it wasn't simply the superintendent. The principal was also part of it in your case. All right.
But I don't think that she had a choice.
It doesn't sound like it. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like she was afraid, too, for whatever reason.
I was very close with her before that started.
Really? When, though, despite your love for the job, your love for the children, did you say, I can't do this anymore? When did you decide, I can't be at this school anymore? Because eventually you quit.
No.
Correct? You never quit.
I finished the year.
You finished the year, but you decided you weren't going to return.
They did a reduction in force.
All right.
So they riffed.
And what does that mean?
Where they give the non-tenured staff essentially a layoff notice, and then they can call back who they want.
I see. So that's what they did to you. Mm-hmm. And if they hadn't done that to you, do you believe you still would have been there? Because of the children, and because you loved teaching there. You probably still would have been there. All right.
Yeah.
Did you ever tell anyone else that you were being abused by the administrators, in particular the superintendent and the principal when she was told to join in? Did you ever tell anyone else?
I mean, my friends knew.
Your friends
who I worked with.
All right. So you had friends that worked within the same institution. So they would hear this man, this professional, this administrator, screaming at one of the teachers. Were you the only teacher that experienced that, or were there other teachers that also experienced that at different times?
At that time, I didn't know of anybody else.
All right.
My really good friend, who's like my second mom, she would actually get in verbal altercations with the superintendent when she would stand up for me.
All right. Okay. And so you were laid off. Is that
At
what
the end
happened?
of the year,
At the end
yeah.
of the year, you were laid off.
Yeah.
So who were you speaking with when you said, what was it that you said you believed would happen eventually, and who did you tell that to? This was something that you said before you left the school. You said you predicted something. And what was that prediction, and who did you tell it to?
I told it to my friend that's like my second mom.
Okay, and this is a woman that's affiliated with the same institution.
Yeah.
And what did you tell her?
I told her that in the future this was going to happen to somebody else. And something really bad was going to happen, because it was going to happen to somebody who wasn't as strong as I was in some way. You know,
It wasn't as strong. All right. And how long was it after you said that you heard about Mary Thorson's death?
About 2.5 years.
2.5 years. Despite everything you went through within that institution, let me think. Despite the fact that you suffered there, one would think that once you were away, because now I believe you told me that you're in another school, another institution that you love very much.
Yeah.
You love teaching there. Everything is great. I'm assuming you love the children. Are you still teaching the same children? I'm also going to make the assumption that you miss the other children that you used to teach in District 169. Okay. So one would think, all right, you went through all of that misery, because you said you became ill, you were getting sick at work. Did you ever have to leave work because you were sick from experiencing that?
No, but I'd have to have my classroom covered a lot to go throw up in the bathroom.
And was this because you didn't know when he was going to approach you? Because you didn't know when he was coming. It was always a pop visit. Right. So once you were free from that institution, what made you feel so strongly about not just the fact that you felt badly because you had something in common with Mary? Every indication was that Mary, from what I could see, from what I've heard from other teachers, teachers that have come forward after having heard of her suicide, teachers that are actually within the institution. I've heard that she was a very kind woman, loved her babies, her students, loved her profession, didn't want to leave, even though she was strongly urged to leave by her mother and father, to just come home. And she said, I can't, because I can't leave the kids. I can't leave my babies. You had a lot in common with Mary.
Yeah.
Is that the reason why you felt so strongly about reaching out and trying on your own to make someone listen? Why did you want to do that?
Because I thought it was the right thing to do.
Why did you think it was the right thing to do? Did anyone come forward when you were in tears and you were afraid?
Only my friend that taught across the hallway.
So other teachers knew, but did they ever comfort you in any way? Never. All right.
No, so when I thought about that happening to Mary,
yes,
it didn't sound like she even had one person, it was extremely painful, but I had somebody who talked to me
Yes.
You know, and she would pray. We would pray together in the morning before school started.
Yes.
And I will be forever grateful to her for that.
So she would pray with you in the morning.
Yeah.
Did you typically pray in the morning when you were at that school?
No.
So when you were praying, what were you praying about?
Strength.
Strength to endure the day.
To make it through the day.
To make it through the day in case you had an encounter with the superintendent of the schools. Is that safe to say?
Just harassment in general.
Harassment in general. Was he the only person to do that?
No.
When it happened? So it was the superintendent and the principal at times. And who were there others?
No.
Just the two of them. Did other teachers ever speak in private about what was going on within the school?
All the time.
And what would they say?
Just, people were afraid to talk.
Teachers were afraid to talk.
Well, they were afraid that they were going to be next, and
yes,
they wanted a job.
They wanted their job, but they were also afraid that they would be next.
I would say so.
And you predicted that somebody was going to be next at some point. Some teacher affiliated with that particular district was going to be next. And that teacher turned out to be Myra Thorson. So tell me, Amy, what you did. You said you immediately shut down what you were doing and started notifying. How did you do that? What did you do?
I started looking at websites, TV station websites, where they have like tip lines where you can fill in a form.
Yes.
And I started emailing TV stations and newspapers, and
yes.
I only heard back from, the Tribune.
The Tribune. So you contacted literally every television station that came to mind. 4. And then you contacted
2 newspapers.
3
Three.
newspapers, and the Tribune was one of them. And did you do that just on that day, or was that something that you did? How long did you reach out to the media about Mary's death?
Well, I typed quite a bit on each form, so it took me probably the rest of that evening. And then I waited to see if I heard from anybody, and the Tribune was the only people I heard from.
And so you actually did all of this within the course of the same day.
Yeah.
You reached out to all of these people. How long was it before you heard something?
It was the next day.
The very next day. And that person was the reporter. That was Becky Schlickerman, correct, for the Tribune. What did Becky say to you because when you were contacting these people, what were you saying to them?
I was just trying to make it known that a suicide had happened, and I attached, the link to the little 2-sentence blurb that was on the internet.
Yes.
And I said that, I had knowledge of her suicide note, which I didn't, but I knew that her parents did.
Yes.
I didn't know the details, but I knew there was a note that mentioned the school district.
Excuse me.
And I just told them that, Ford Heights doesn't receive any press coverage.
Yes.
And somebody needed to pay attention.
All right, so you didn't approach them because I would have assumed that you would have said, this suicide had to do with this teacher. I am, or I was, also a teacher from within this district, and I think it needs some attention. You just simply said, this is a teacher within this district. It doesn't really get any attention, and I think somebody needs to report on it.
Yeah.
Is that basically what you did? And then you gave your contact information.
At first I was anonymous.
You were anonymous.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting. Because you were compelled to do it, which meant, I mean, clearly you were compelled to do it because you broke down when you heard. You immediately stopped doing everything else and concentrated solely on reaching the media. But initially you did it anonymously. Why?
I don't know. I think I was scared.
You were scared. Okay. You were scared. You weren't that scared. You were scared, but you weren't that scared.
Well, scared of...
What were you afraid of?
I don't know.
Because you weren't there anymore. So why were you afraid?
I don't know. I think it was just... I don't know. But that didn't last long.
It didn't.
Because...
Apparently it didn't. How long did that last? That you were
anonymous?
Anonymous?
48 hours.
All right.
Because everything became... The more I started thinking about it...
Yes.
It really just became a matter of, like, what was right.
Yes. Okay. So, you were first anonymous, which means, did you have to go backwards? Did you have to backtrack and then let everybody know this is me? Or did you just... How were you anonymous when you were giving contact information, though?
But I didn't at first. I created an anonymous email on AOL.
Oh, I see.
You know, so I had a separate email just for this event. I created an email address on AOL just for Mary's
I see. So
sake.
when you say anonymous, you mean you just made up something so that you could still be contacted, but they wouldn't know that it was you.
My name wasn't included in there right away.
Yes.
Right. And then once I started talking to Becky, well, we emailed back and forth a few times.
Yes.
And then Becky started, you know, really investigating. And then she got a hold of Mary's parents.
Definitely, she did a wonderful job.
So then when we talked on the phone,
yes.
Obviously I wasn't anonymous. I gave her my phone number.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
Yeah. It eventually, it didn't last long.
So when you were contacted finally by Becky, you must have been, were you shocked? Because that's pretty fast. She contacted you almost immediately.
I was excited. It was some questions, you know,
Yes.
that her editors had for her. I was excited that I had, like, sparked interest.
Yes.
Because I knew from what I had heard
Yes.
about the information that once a reporter got, you know, her nails into a little bit.
Yes.
And I hadn't talked to Mary's parents at all, so I didn't know how much farther this was going to go.
You just knew you wanted to reach someone and say something. You didn't know what would come of it. You were just hoping someone would listen. Even though you were afraid, you still did.
Yeah.
Yes. After you contacted Becky, and I'm assuming she kept in contact with you as she prepared herself to interview the Thorsons and write the article, which I saw the article. It was amazing. And the Thorsons are crazy about you, by the way. When did you actually speak with Mary's parents? Or did you did speak with Mary's parents?
I called them.
Did you call them after you found out about Mary or after you contacted the media? Do you remember?
It was about 2 weeks after I started talking to Becky.
2 weeks after. And what made you wait for 2 weeks to talk to them? Why do you think?
Because I knew it was going to be a difficult phone call to make.
Yes.
You know, it wasn't like I knew Mary, you know, and I could say, I knew your daughter, and, you know, I felt I had to call complete strangers.
Yes.
And I had to talk with my mom. she said, you know, they're probably wondering
How this
how.
Yes. I believe they did wonder how.
And that was all. That was all we said.
And what happened when you actually spoke with them? Did you speak with both of Mary's parents? John? Did you just speak with John Thorson?
Yeah.
You did. And what did he say to you?
Well, he answered the phone, and you know, I said, you don't know me, but I'm the person who called the newspaper, and you know, I know that Becky has contacted you, and we talked for almost 2.5 hours.
Yes. And when he talked to you, did he share what happened with his child within that school? Did he also share the fact that she had been harassed for refusing to change grades? Did he share that with you?
Not the grade part at first. That came later.
That came later.
Yeah.
Did he share the fact that she was also being abused by the superintendent of the school?
Yeah.
Yes.
Myra Eve Thorson.
Andrea Renee Robinson.
Kelly Marie Titus.
Mary Eve Thorson. Patrick N. Louder. Peter. To the floor. How low can you go? Can you bring it to the top? Like it never stop? Can you bring it to the top? One hop. Right foot now. Left foot now, y'all. Chop, chop.
Your wonderful parents, your joy brings joy to your families and friends. Your love creates more love in the world. Your marriage is a living testimony to what is solid, lasting, and true. Happy anniversary from me, Johnny.
Happy anniversary! Yay! Awesome job.
Mary's turn. I got me a hat and scarf for Mom made. And don't forget the computer. Then Mom gave me and a camcorder Mom and Dad gave me. Thank you, thank you.
A bad day, and I won't complain. Hey, look at oh, you gotta come out church and sing. I can hardly see the road. Glory. So I ask the question, Lord. Lord, why so much pain? He knows what's best for you. Oh, Lord. He knows what's best for me. Go, girl. Although my weary eyes, they can't see. But all of your good days. All my good days. Always your good days. Yeah, well, my bad days. Night won't complain. You gotta sing now. You figured it out there.
Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below us. Above us only sky. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. Imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger, or brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people sharing all the world. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. You may say that I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us.